Heartwarming tale, single dad discovers broke student is millionaire's hidden daughter, an inspirational journey of resilience. Jake had never expected this afternoon would change everything. Leaning uneasily against the worn counter at the diner, he looked down at his daughter Lily, her bright eyes shining beneath her dirty blonde curls. As always, she wore that brave smile, but he could see through her just like he saw through the thin veneer of pot pie and coffee that enveloped them. It had been 2 years since he lost his wife, and the ache still echoed in their little home, carrying the weight of dreams halted too soon. "Dad, can I have a piece of pie?" She tugged at his sleeve, her tone innocent and light-hearted, but there was sadness lurking just beneath the surface. He wanted to give her the world, to fill every empty corner of their lives with sweetness. But bills piled up like the dirty plates in front of Emily, the waitress hustling through the diner's crowded booths. Despite the noise, Jake often sought solace in her hardworking spirit. Emily moved with a fierce determination that pulled at Jake's heart. He watched her serve steaming plates, wiping sweat from her brow. She approached him now, her hands full, an almost invisible force amidst the chatter. She nodded sympathetically, her eyes mirroring the unspoken understanding they both shared. Struggles were universal here. "Pie doesn't count as dinner, you know," she teased with a half-smile, a genuine flicker of kindness that reminded him of his late wife. "Maybe not, but she's earned it," Jake replied, reaching for his wallet. Just then, he noticed the slight deflation in Emily's shoulders as she slipped behind the counter, revealing a vulnerable glimpse of the pressures she bore. He caught a glimpse of her notebook, frayed and filled with sketches of beautiful worlds far removed from their reality. Later that evening, Jake felt compelled to talk to her. "You work hard, don't forget to eat," he said, his voice low, searching for common ground in unsteady waters. Emily blushed under his gaze. "Easy for you to say, Jake." She held his gaze for a moment, then, with a sigh, added, "Sometimes you have to make sacrifices." Jake's heart raced at knowing they both carried like burdens. As the days passed, he learned that Emily skipped meals to save for art school. To stay resilient. The tension between their lives was palpable. A broke waitress hidden behind a mask of indifference and a determined dad trying to maintain his footing for Lily. But when calamity struck one stormy night and his old truck quit in the middle of a downpour, despair threatened to consume him. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Tears stung his eyes as the realization hit him. Without a truck, he couldn't reach his jobs, and without those jobs, he couldn't provide for Lily. The storm rumbled like thunder in his heart. It all felt impossible. Just then, Emily appeared again, this time with resolve in her heart and a secret in her pocket. "I know how to fix this," she said, her voice steady yet imploring. She revealed that her estranged wealthy father had offered help, something she had turned down before. But now, standing in the rain-soaked mess of Jake's life, she felt compelled to save him. A moment passed, heavy with uncertainty. The chasm between them continued to stretch. Could he accept her help, face the repercussions of her hidden identity as a millionaire's daughter? Hope flickered as they both stood at a crossroads, an unspoken understanding forming between them. Would their friendship withstand the weight of wealth and struggle? Would it be enough to see them through? Jake's chest felt tight. This was just the beginning. The storm circled around them, but in each other, they found a glimmer of light, a promise that they could rise above their burdens together. Questions lingered in the air, waiting for answers that could change everything. Jake's heart pounded in his chest, each beat a reminder of the weight of the decision hanging in the air. Emily stood before him, drenched and resolute. Her vulnerability matched his as they faced the raging storm. She was offering him an escape, a lifeline he never expected. But pride nipped at the edges of his thoughts. You don't have to do this, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, half hopeful, half resigned. And you don't have to go it alone, Emily replied, her fierce eyes holding his. I know what it's like to struggle. You take care of your little girl while I chase my dream. But dreams come at a cost, and sometimes we need to lean on each other. Jake wanted to argue but could only feel the tightening knot in his throat. He looked at Lily, who had fallen asleep in the passenger seat, oblivious to the turmoil surrounding her. He thought about all the sacrifices he'd made, the late nights, the empty pockets, and the dreams he had locked away in a dusty corner of his mind. What if it changes everything? He managed to say, already knowing the answer. Maybe it does. But maybe it's for the better, Emily said, taking a step forward, the rain soaking not just her clothes but her resolve, too. You give me hope every time you walk into that diner. You're doing all this for her. Let me help you do it better. Jake weighed her words. The temptation lingered like the scent of fresh coffee brewing in the diner. But would it ruin their fragile friendship? He felt the storm rage inside him, one part wanted to hold on to his pride like a shield, while the other yearned for peace to do better for Lily. Finally, he nodded slowly, okay. But I'm not going to be comfortable with this. Emily smiled, relieved and warm as if the rain had briefly turned to sunlight. That's all I ask. As she fished out her phone, Jake felt a rush of panic. He always wanted to be the one providing. Just a loan, that's all it would be, right? He couldn't ignore the worry gnawing at him. Yes, just a loan, Emily assured him, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed her expression, the secret she held still thick in the air between them. The call connected, and as Emily spoke to her father, Jake shifted nervously, his fingers tapping against the steering wheel, the weight of their shared past lingering like a ghost in the car. The words exchanged began to feel surreal. Her father's laughter echoed through the line, full of life and warmth, so unlike the coldness Jake had associated with wealth. Once she hung up, Emily turned to him. He's sending someone to pick us up. We'll take care of everything. You just have to trust me. Trust. A word Jake had learned to be wary of after losing his wife, and yet here it was again, offered freely by the person standing in front of him. What about you? He asked more earnestly. What if he doesn't approve of this? What if this all comes crashing down? That's a risk I'm willing to take, Emily said with conviction. I want to be part of your life, and I don't care what it takes. Jake's eyes softened at her words. Vulnerability spilled into the spaces between them, a journey through fear and strength. It felt like the start of something new, the ground beneath seemed to shift, even in the middle of the storm. As they waited, the rain began to lighten, and with it came the dawn of hope. But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. What if, along with the help, she also brought storms he couldn't predict? He glanced at Lily, who stirred in her sleep, a reminder of everything that mattered. The voice of hope whispered that maybe, just maybe, they could weather this storm together, and yet, as the headlights of a car appeared in the distance, Jake couldn't help but wonder, would accepting her help mean inviting chaos into his carefully structured life? The car rolled to a stop, water splashing up around the tires as the engine rumbled softly. Jake's stomach flipped when he saw the familiar face behind the wheel. It was Emily's older brother, Chris, looking perplexed and maybe even a bit concerned as he squinted through the misty windshield. Jake felt an odd mix of relief and anxiety. This was someone from her world, a world that he had always kept at arm's length. Hey, you guys alright? Chris stepped out, his voice cutting through the damp air. He unfolded his tall frame from the car, shooting a quick glance at Lily, still snoozing peacefully in the back seat. We're fine, just waiting out the storm, Emily replied, her connection with her brother evident in the way her voice softened. Jake could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, a tacit acknowledgement of the precarious situation they found themselves in. He fidgeted, wishing he could retreat a little deeper into himself. The thought of being scrutinized, of Emily's family looking into his life, into the qualities he felt he lacked, sent waves of insecurity over him. Let's get you both out of here, Chris said, casually brushing it off as he leaned against the door frame of his car. But there was something more serious in his expression now, an underlying urgency masked by his casual demeanor. Jake took a deep breath and nodded, fighting the urge to retreat again. He needed to do this for Lily. As they climbed into Chris's car, Jake couldn't help but fidget with the plain, nondescript fabric of the seat. Memories of sleepless nights at the diner flashed in his mind, the clink of coins, the hum of conversations, the urgent moments of balancing bills while keeping a watchful eye on his daughter. Each one felt like a reminder of what he couldn't afford to lose. "Emily tells me you're having some hard times," Chris broke the silence, his voice even but firm. "I want to help. You don't have to do this alone." Jake clenched his fists, images of past failures dancing in front of his eyes. "It's complicated, Chris. I've been managing just fine," he replied, a touch of defensiveness creeping into his tone. "I know you think that," Chris countered, maintaining eye contact. "But even the strongest guys can't carry everything on their own. You got a lot on your plate. It's okay to ask for help when you need it." Jake met Emily's gaze for a brief moment, her eyes were full of unwavering support. Still, doubt itched at the edges of his mind. Would accepting help from Chris make him look weak? A wave of shame swept through him, as if he were somehow betraying all those years of hard work. Lily stirred in the back seat, mumbling softly. Jake turned, watching her for a moment. His heart ached. She deserved so much more than this struggle. The car started moving, and the rain began to patter lightly against the roof, creating a rhythmic soundtrack that both comforted and unsettled him. His mind was a whirlwind, thoughts darted in circles around how accepting help from Emily and now her brother could disrupt everything he had built for Lily. "Look," Chris said, breaking the tension, "I'm not trying to pry. I just want to help. We can figure out a plan that suits everyone." Jake felt his resolve begin to splinter. The truth was, he was scared. Scared of what it meant to accept help, scared of relying on others, but even more, scared of losing what little he had left with Lily. As they turned down a long, familiar road that led towards the city, Jake sensed something shifting within him. Perhaps accepting a little chaos wasn't the end. Maybe it could open the door to a new beginning, and then it hit him like a thunderclap. What if this help, this connection, was exactly what they needed to weather the storms ahead? "Okay," he finally said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Let us talk." But as they drove on, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part of this journey was still to come. Would he ever truly be able to let go of his pride? Or would he always be looking over his shoulder, wondering if help came at too high a cost? Jake's heart raced as Chris navigated the slick streets. Each turn seemed to echo his internal struggle with acceptance. Emily's hand found his on the armrest, her warmth grounding him as the rain beat down like an urgent heartbeat against the roof. It was a reminder he wasn't alone, even when he felt adrift in uncertainty. "Where are we going?" he finally asked, glancing at Chris through the mirror. His throat felt tight, words thick with hesitation. "Just a place I think we can talk, away from the rain," Chris replied, and his voice offered a comfort that surprised Jake. Chris wasn't just Emily's brother, he was someone who genuinely wanted to help, breaking through the invisible walls Jake had built around himself. The whir of the windshield wipers mingled with the silence that followed. Jake weighed his options like bricks in a backpack. Part of him wanted to unload everything: the pressure, the loneliness, the heartache of feeling like a failure as a father. But another part screamed to protect the fragile facade he had crafted. "Do you ever think about what it means to be the first person to step forward?" Emily interjected then, her thoughtful tone laced with something deeper. The question hung in the air, and Jake shifted, unsure of which truth to share. "Sometimes I'm just scared I'll ruin everything," he admitted quietly, staring at the road ahead. "I don't want to fail Lily." "Feeling afraid is okay," Emily said, her hand wrapping tighter around his. "But keeping it all inside, it won't help you or her." She then leaned toward Chris, who nodded, a silent agreement. The car pulled into a small cafe, a rustic building surrounded by thick trees, offering a refuge from the storm. Chris parked and ushered them inside, where the warm smell of coffee and pastries enveloped them. It felt almost surreal, stepping into a place filled with warmth while the world outside remained cold and chaotic. As they settled at a table in the corner, with steaming mugs placed before them, Jake couldn't help but notice the way Emily smiled at him, encouraging and safe. "You're doing your best, Jake. But pretending you have it all under control isn't the only way to be strong." Chris spoke, his earnest gaze fixed on Jake. "Sometimes it takes real strength to let others in. You don't have to take on the burden alone." It was like Chris was holding up a mirror to Jake's fears. He swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat at the realization. Could accepting help be a sign of strength rather than weakness? I don't know how to ask for help," Jake replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "You might not have to ask," Chris said, leaning over slightly. "Look, I know life can sometimes feel like a never-ending uphill battle. But there are people who genuinely want to lend a hand. You don't have to go through this alone." The words echoed in Jake's chest. They felt like an invitation to reconsider the narrative he clung to for years. Maybe this was a small step he needed, a crack in his armor where hope could seep through. As they talked, the storm rattled outside, but within those cafe walls, a new kind of warmth began to settle in Jake's heart. Maybe he really could let down his guard. Maybe there was a way forward where he didn't have to face the darkness alone. With each sip of coffee and every shared laugh, something inside him began to mend. Trust was a fragile thing, but Chris was showing him that it could be found. But just as Jake felt his tension ease, the bells over the cafe door jangled. A familiar silhouette stepped inside, soaked from head to toe, their face shadowed by the brim of a cap. Jake's breath caught in his throat. It was his ex, Claire. What was she doing here? The shift in the atmosphere was palpable. Jake's heart dropped as he locked eyes with her, unsure of the confrontation brewing ahead. Would this change everything they had just begun to build? Jake's mind raced as he faced the unexpected figure in the cafe. Claire stood there, drenched from the rain, her presence an unwelcome storm in what had been a moment of fragile peace. A million thoughts tangled together in a matter of seconds: guilt, anger, confusion. "Jake," she said softly, her voice barely breaking through the chatter of the cafe. He felt his heart pound against his ribs. Chris and Emily exchanged glances, sensing the tension crackle in the air. The warm atmosphere shattered under the weight of their shared history. "What are you doing here?" Jake managed to ask, struggling to keep the emotion out of his voice. Claire took a step closer, her eyes searching for something. Was it remorse? "I came to talk," she said. "Please. Can we sit?" Jake glanced at Emily, who squeezed his hand reassuringly, and at Chris, whose expression remained steady. With a reluctant nod, Jake motioned for her to join them. Claire slid into the booth, her face still damp, and the distance between them felt like miles. I didn't know you were back in town," he said, trying to keep his tone neutral. Claire ran a hand through her hair, water pooling in her lap. "I've been trying to figure things out, Jake. About us, about Lily." She paused, swallowing hard. "I've missed so much." "Missed so much?" Jake shot back, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "You chose to walk away, Claire. You left us." "I know, and I'm sorry. It was the hardest decision I ever made." Her eyes brimmed with tears, and for a moment, Jake felt the old hurt resurface, jagged and fresh. "But I want to be part of our daughter's life. I realized too late how much I lost." "Is it too late for us, too?" he dared to ask. The words hung in the air, thick as the steam rising from their mugs. Claire opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, the barista brought over their drinks, breaking the tension momentarily. Jake's heart pounded as he watched Claire's eyes dart over to Emily, then to Chris. He could sense their unease. "Can we have a moment?" Claire finally asked, eyes pleading. Jake nodded, heart heavy with uncertainty. A million questions raced through his mind. Was she sincere? Did she really think she could just step back and like nothing happened? Emily sat back, respecting the unspoken boundaries. Chris shifted slightly, his gaze still on Jake, giving him a silent encouragement. Why now? Jake pressed, his voice steadier than he felt. What changed? Claire took a breath, collecting her thoughts. I've been seeing a therapist. I realized I was running from everything: my past, my responsibilities. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I want to be there for Lily. I want to try. The sincerity in her voice struck him, but doubt clouded his heart. And what if it's too late? He challenged, his own fears creeping back. What if she doesn't want anything to do with you? I'll accept that, Claire said, determination etching her features. But I need to try. At least give me that chance. Lily deserves to know her mom. The sincerity in her tone mixed with Jake's untamed emotions. A part of him ached for the family they once had, while another felt protective over how far he had come. This moment had the potential to unravel everything he'd begun to rebuild. As the rain continued to pound outside, filling the air with the scent of wet pavement, Jake could feel the weight of this conversation settling deeper within him, an enormous battle of love, anger, and a chance for redemption. Suddenly, a sense of urgency washed over him. What if you were lying to yourself? How do I know you're not going to disappear again? Claire reached across the table, her hand almost touching his. Because I need to face my fears now. For Lily. And for you. Feeling the walls he'd built begin to crack, Jake's heart wrestled with a decision that could change everything. Could he risk opening his heart again? Just as Jake opened his mouth to respond, a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by a shout. A scene unfolded in the rain-soaked street, drawing everyone's gaze. Jake, Emily whispered, a note of alarm creeping into her voice. Look. Jake turned, his heart racing again, not from Claire's words but from the chaos spilling into their moment of quiet. What on earth was happening outside? He had a sinking feeling it might escalate far beyond their little cafe table. The chaos outside took center stage as Jake's eyes locked onto the scene unfolding on the street. A crowd had gathered, voices raised, a sharp contrast to the subdued atmosphere of the cafe. Rain drummed against the windows, but the tension inside felt far more oppressive now. What's happening? Chris leaned closer, his brow furrowed. Emily's grip on Jake's hand tightened. Looks like there's a fight, she whispered, her voice trembling. Jake followed the frantic movements of people, struggling to make sense of the commotion. A man shouted, throwing frantic gestures towards another figure. Jake squinted, trying to see through the rain-smeared glass. His heart raced for different reasons now. Should we go check it out? Chris suggested, clearly itching for action. No, let us stay here, Emily countered, fear lacing her tone. Jake felt her chest rise and fall against his arm, a silent anchor in the storm of emotions swirling around him. But there was something deep inside him, something primal pulling him inexplicably toward the chaos outside. Claire, still sitting across from him, wore a mix of concern and unease. Jake, she started, but her voice was drowned out by another loud crash. Stay here, Jake said to Emily, his voice firm. The connection they shared gave him strength as he stood up, determined to protect the space he'd built around them, a space that suddenly felt threatened. I'll be right back, he added, before making his way to the door, the scent of rain and spilled coffee hanging heavy in the air. As he stepped outside, a surge of adrenaline rushed through him. The cool rain splattered across his face, grounding him in reality. His gaze darted wildly among the faces in the growing crowd. The fight appeared to involve two young men, but what struck Jake the hardest was the desperation etched on their faces. He could see anger, frustration, and perhaps even despair. Hey! Break it up! He called, stepping forward despite the flash of uncertainty that coursed through him. But the two were too caught up in their confrontation, oblivious to his words. As one of them threw a fist, Jake felt a swell of protection rise within him. Come on! This isn't the way! He shouted again, trying to project authority over the fray, amid the chaos, he noticed a girl standing at the back, her face pale, eyes wide witnessing it all. Her hands gripped the edge of her jacket, as if to shield herself not just from the rain, but from the overwhelming intensity of the moment. "Someone get help!" Jake yelled, his voice barely slicing through the din. He couldn't comprehend why, but something about the girl struck a chord in him. As adrenaline coursed through his veins, he took another step forward, intending to push through the crowd. Suddenly, a voice rang out, cutting across the noise. It was Claire. "Jake! Wait!" she called, urgency wrapping around her words. He turned, momentarily distracted, but the sight of her face, fear shadowing her features, pulled him back. "What?" he barked, frustration lacing his tone. Claire took a few steps closer, her voice steady yet pleading. "You're not a part of this. Be careful." Her concern hit him like a bullet, but he glanced back at the unfolding chaos, then once again at the girl who still watched, frozen. He sensed something deeper there, something that demanded his attention. But just as he started to push forward again, something exploded in the crowd, a loud shout, a painful scream. Jake's heart dropped. In that moment of distraction, everything changed. Someone stumbled, falling hard, and the scene erupted into confusion. He realized then he was facing a decision more significant than he could have imagined. Should he rush in and confront the chaos, or was it time to protect what he valued most? As he wrestled with his instincts, a voice rang clear in his mind, reminding him of everything he hadn't figured out with Claire, and all that was yet to unfold. Before he could react, the rain-soaked street surged with emotion, and he understood that changes were coming not just from the chaos swirling outside, but from within himself. And in that swirling storm, his next step would define everything. What awaited him beyond that moment? What revelations and obstacles would emerge? He felt the world shift as they all hovered on the edge of some great unknown. The crowd erupted. Gasps mingled with shouts, all of it blending into a chaotic symphony. Jake stood at the edge, a storm of emotions swirling inside him. He felt the urge to act like a lifeguard in rough seas, battling the waves for those who couldn't save themselves. But that girl, the one watching from the back, pulled at something deep within him. "Jake!" Claire's voice cut through the haze. She stepped forward, eyes wide with fear, searching his. "You can't save them all. You might get hurt. But I can't just stand here." He snapped back, the words escaping before he could rein them in. Anger mixed with desperation. The fight escalated as one of the men landed a punch squarely in the other's jaw. Blood splattered against the pavement, and a wave of panic washed over Jake. He glanced back at the girl. Her breath was hitching in her throat, eyes glistening with unshed tears. It hit him hard. She didn't just need saving from the chaos, she needed someone to notice her pain. "Stay here," he demanded of Claire, not waiting for a reply. He made his choice. Moving into the fray felt like diving from a cliff into the unknown. The rain poured heavier, drenching him, blurring the boundaries of the world around him. But each step forward felt steady, he was heading somewhere that mattered. "Hey! Enough!" Jake shouted again, voice rising above the noise, filling with urgency. He stepped between the two fighters, arms raised in a mix of warning and entreaty. Their eyes were wild with adrenaline, faces twisted in anger and something deeper hurt. "This isn't worth it. Look around." He could feel the tension coiling tighter, every heartbeat echoing the chaos. People were shouting in the background, some trying to break through, others were recording with phones, eyes glued to the drama unfolding like it was a tragic soap opera. Finally, one of the guys paused, a flicker of confusion crossing his features as the reality of Jake's words seeped into the moment. "What do you know about us?" he shouted, chest heaving with rage. "More than you think," Jake replied, his own emotions flaring up. "You're fighting, but all it means is hurting each other more. You both want something, but this isn't the way." The crowd hushed, curiosity mingling with tension. Jake noticed that the girl was now moving closer, drawn by the energy shifting around him. Her eyes locked on his, and something clicked. She wasn't just a bystander, she was a reflection of what he fought for every day. Before he could think twice, he turned to her. "What is your name?" he asked, his tone softening now that she was closer. "Lily," she whispered, almost drowned out by the lingering shouts. "Lily," he repeated, feeling the weight of her name. "What are you afraid of?" She blinked, looking like a deer caught in headlights. Everything her voice trembled, and Jake felt a rise of protective instinct surge within him. Suddenly, one of the fighters charged forward as if it were all too much to contain, and no one was expecting it. Jake instinctively stepped to the side, pushing Lily behind him. The world narrowed into those few precious seconds, his heart pounding like a drum. "Get back!" he yelled, as the fist flew past him. In that split second, the chaotic energy snapped into clarity. The raw emotions and desperation intertwined, creating a single, daunting wave that threatened to crash down on them all. Lily's fear bubbled over, mixed with Jake's protective impulse, and he realized he stood not just against a fight, but for something far bigger than himself. The question danced in the air: how far would he go to uphold what he valued? Just then, a blast of sirens echoed in the distance, slicing through the confusion, offering a glimpse of hope and interruption. Jake knew, in that moment, everything was about to change. But would it be for better or worse? The crowd shifted as the sound grew closer, each person now anticipating which way the tide would turn. And Jake, with his heart racing, wondered would he stand firm against what threatened to break them apart, or would he find a way to bring them all together before darkness swallowed everything? The sirens drew nearer, slicing through the chaos like a knife through fog. The crowd, a living organism of anxiety and anticipation, began to shift. A collective instinct kicked in, people started inching back, glancing nervously at one another as if gauging a safe distance from the tension. Jake felt the pulse of that anxious heartbeat reverberate through him, but his focus remained clear: Lily. "Stay close," he said, though he could barely hear his own voice over the din. He turned slightly but continued to keep his eyes on the brawlers. The two fighters appeared like duelists on opposite sides of a dark stage, uncertainty and anger swirling around them. Jake had stepped into their world, yet he could feel the weight of everyone's expectations, their fears pressing against him. "Are you okay?" he whispered to Lily, glancing back at her. Her face was pale, the rain mixing with the tear streaks down her cheeks. "No," she started, but Jake didn't wait for her response. "Just breathe. We'll get through this," he assured her, grasping her hand momentarily to convey some of his own strength. The men exchanged furious glares. One of them shifted his weight, clearly reconsidering. The other, however, looked lost in the storm of adrenaline and anger, teetering on the edge of losing control. Just as he took a step forward, something in Jake snapped. "Wait!" Jake shouted, his voice raw with desperation. "Listen to me. Look around. What do you want? This? Blood on the street? Pain?" Jake's words echoed, reaching into the fog of fury. Eyes turned towards him, and it felt as if time had slowed. The fight was suspended in a fragile moment. One of the fighters, still snarling, paused. His nostrils flared, and Jake could see the flicker of doubt creeping in. "Is this what you wanted when you woke up today?" Jake pressed on, the tension in his chest tightening. "To lash out? Or to find something that makes you whole?" The crowd leaned in, some nodding, their rapt attention transforming Jake's fear into a current of resolve. For every life hurt by violence, members of the audience shared their own stories, pain painted across their faces. A hesitant voice came from the crowd, a man shouting, "You're better than this." The sirens continued their approach, and it seemed like the universe itself was waiting, holding its breath. Lily stepped closer, her fear intertwining with the emerging courage. "Jake," she said, her quiet voice cutting through the chaos. "What if they don't listen?" "I've gotta try," he replied softly, carving out the space between fear and hope. He turned back to the fighters, emboldened by Lily's unwavering presence. I can't change what's inside you, but I can ask what do you truly want. The fight shifted, uncertainty blooming in the air. The fighters looked towards each other, confusion replacing anger for just a moment. Man, this is stupid, one fighter finally muttered, voice barely audible. The roar of the crowd faded, shifting from chaos to a stunned anticipation. Jake's heart raced anew. Was the situation thawing? Would it dissolve into understanding? Just then, the sirens exploded fully onto the scene, lights flashing like a warning beacon. The momentary bond of realization shattered as panic surged through the crowd once more. Look out! Someone screamed, and Jake instinctively pulled Lily behind him again, just as the officers arrived with a calm authority. Step away from each other. Lily's eyes widened in fear, the warmth of their brief connection now mingled with fresh tension. Jake swallowed hard. He didn't know what would happen next, but he felt a shift. He wasn't just fighting for Lily any longer, he was fighting for everyone who discovered their voice one hesitant whisper at a time. What if this moment could spark more than just a fight? What if it could ignite change? With hope igniting in his chest, he turned back to the fighters as the officers moved in. His heart raced, knowing they were at the edge of something powerful, but the question lingered. Could they break the cycle? Could they truly find a way to change? Panic rippled through the crowd as the police shouted commands. Jake's heart thumped loudly in his chest. The moment he'd carved out was fracturing, pieces scattering like glass. The two fighters hesitated for a heartbeat, eyes flicking from each other to the officers, confusion etched on their faces. What do we do? Lily asked, her voice nearly lost in the noise. Jake could feel her fingers tighten around his. It was both a plea for reassurance and a reminder that they were in this together. Just trust me, he whispered, letting go of her hand for a moment to take a step towards the fighters. The fear was palpable, yet something deeper, something raw and vulnerable stood beneath it all. Jake needed to unearth that feeling. Hey! He called to the fighters, trying to ground them. Look, I know things feel chaotic right now. But there's a way out of this without another fight. Remember why you started. Was it for your friends? Your family? Let us not make this day about hurting each other. Another siren wailed in the background, but the clamor faded into a distant echo. The fighters exchanged glances, their hostility beginning to slip. Jake breathed, feeling the weight lift a little. The crowd, too, seemed to shift subtly, tension melting away as shared vulnerability painted their expressions. What is there to lose? Jake continued, leaning into that openness. Think about the people in your lives, and what you stand to gain by walking away. What if today was a chance, not just for you two, but for everyone watching? Lily stepped closer, her resolve shining through the fear. You give yourself power when you choose peace, she added, her voice steady. You set the example for everyone who looks up to you. The wrestle for control wavered. Jake could see veins of doubt weaving through the brawlers. They had pent-up emotion gnawing at them, but now, faced with their own humanity, change felt more possible. One fighter, the one who had initially hesitated, breathed in deep. Maybe this is dumb, he mumbled, eyes darting to the ground. The other collected himself, fists slowly unclenching. Yeah, man, we've got so much more to lose, he echoed, voice shaky but softer. Jake's heart soared, a flicker of hope bursting like sparks lighting a dark room. Exactly. He encouraged them, emboldened by their shift. We could be part of something better together, instead of ripping our community apart. Dude, let us just back off, okay? The first fighter insisted, reluctance creeping into his voice. The officers looked taken aback, their authority suddenly overshadowed by the emerging connection in front of them. Jake sensed the shift one small moment could lead to a bigger change. But just then, a commotion erupted from the fringe of the crowd as someone started yelling. Keep away from them. Jake turned to see a woman, rushing towards them, her expression frantic. Don't hurt my son. She shouted, desperation lacing each word. Heart pounding faster, Jake felt a new anxiety rise. He had no idea who she was, but her words fused into a sharp twist of uncertainty in the air. As she reached the fighters, everything hung in balance. Who was this woman? What story did she hold that might affect the fragile peace Jake had fought to create? Jake glanced back at Lily, her eyes wide, reflecting his own questions. Could they truly put violence behind them? Or was this another layer of conflict they hadn't seen coming? Jake's heart raced as the frantic woman pressed into the circle, her hands trembling as they reached out towards the fighters. "You can't let them hurt my boy," she cried, panic lacing her voice. It sent a ripple of tension through the crowd, and Jake felt the fragile peace they had just forged start to unravel. "Mom! I'm fine," one of the fighters yelled, his voice laced with exasperation. But the woman's terrified face told another story, a story of fear and love intermingled, a desperate attempt to shield her child from pain. Jake recognized that kind of fear, it gnawed at him every day as he faced the reality of single fatherhood. "Please. Just stop," he shouted, feeling a sense of urgency to protect the moment they had created. The officers shifted nervously, unsure how to handle the unexpected escalation. "We're trying to find a way out of this." The wet pavement reflected the tumultuous emotions spilling out as nearby faces shifted from concern to fear, confusion piercing through the crowd. Even Lily stood frozen, her small body trembling next to him, eyes wide with uncertainty. As the crowd hushed, the fighters exchanged glances again, caught amid their fear, frustration, and the mother's cry. Jake's heart pounded for both Lily and this woman's son. A realization poured over him like the rain that continued to fall. "Look," he began, grounding his own resolve, "we've all been in dark places. It's okay to be scared, it's okay to be lost. But fighting won't lead us anywhere good. Let us talk, let us find a way that doesn't hurt the ones we love." The woman's eyes locked onto Jake, and for a moment, it felt as if the entire world hung in balance, teetering on the edge of something monumental. "My son, he just wants respect," she replied, voice shaking. "He's been pushed around enough. Respect doesn't come from fists." Jake replied, feeling the heat rise in his chest. "He deserves more than this, more than fear and violence." The air turned electric, pregnant with possibility rather than dread. The fighters hesitated. The energy shifted, hardships and pain gave way to vulnerability as they sensed the mother's anguish. Jake felt a wave of something change within him as he was no longer just a participant, he was a catalyst. "Your son can show that he is strong without being violent," Jake urged, his heart pounding with each word. "People will respect him for what he stands for, not for who he can knock down." The fighters slowly began to glance between one another, the reality of the situation dawning on them. Behind the anger, perhaps they were just two young men searching for their own worth in the wrong places. "I'm tired of hurting," the first fighter finally spoke, voice low but steady. "I don't want to end up like this. It's pointless." The second fighter nodded, the fight visibly draining from his shoulders as fear transformed into realization. "Let us just walk away." The mother rushed forward and embraced her son, tears spilling down her cheeks, and in that moment, Jake felt his own eyes burn with tears, the overwhelming weight of shared humanity washing over him. Lily's hand found Jake's again. "Dad, are they okay?" she asked, her childlike innocence radiating hope. "Yes, sweet girl. I think they're going to be okay," he breathed, his chest swelling with pride and relief. As the sirens began to fade in the distance, Jake turned his attention back to the fighters, who now stood, tentative and vulnerable, their expressions dissolving into realization. "It takes strength to walk away," he told them, voice steady. "And it's okay to lean on those you love." The fighters nodded, no longer just participants in a battle, but young men confronting their own demons. The crowd began to disperse, whispers of understanding replacing the clamor. Jake felt a sense of empowerment. The moment had transcended chaos. Looking down at Lily, who wore a proud smile, he realized there was more strength in asking for help than in closing off from the world. clinging desperately to pride. He turned and saw Claire, tears shining in her eyes, a look of near admiration swirling on her features. "I'm proud of you," she said softly, and he knew, for the first time in a long time, that they were all moving forward together, the past no longer looming, but rather informing a future filled with possibilities. As the last remnants of the storm began to clear, Jake felt the weight lift off his heart. Maybe they could navigate their paths together, building something anew for all of them. Maybe healing and redemption could come from facing their struggles side by side. With each step home, he felt lighter, hope weaving a tapestry of connection between them stronger than defeat or despair. He could already envision a brighter tomorrow for Lily, for Emily, and even for Claire. Together, they would weather any storm. Make sure to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will inspire you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more incredible individuals seeking transformation. I want to know how you felt about this ending. Comment below with your thoughts and reactions. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this journey of hope and resilience. Real fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions, and I appreciate each and every one of you.